Hi, welcome to Coily Crowns. I'm Ashante.
And I'm Lori, and welcome to our queendom.
Today's show, we're going to be talking to Johnette Davis. She's a nurse and also my sister, and we're going to be talking about all things COVID. So, welcome to the show, Johnette. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming and being our very first guest. We're very excited. And we're also thankful that you are a nurse and you've dedicated your life to helping people. So, can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been a nurse and what your current position is?
Okay. So I've been a nurse for a little over 15 years now, almost 16 years. Um, Currently, I serve as the Assistant Vice President of Quality and Patient Safety, and that oversees the hospital's infection prevention strategies in addition to accreditation, regulatory compliance, patient safety. And so just making sure that the organization has what they need to deliver safe care to our patients.
Awesome. And what made you want to even become a nurse?
Oh, well, my mom, she was always a home health aide and always cared for people within their homes. And so once I got ready to graduate high school, I thought I wanted to be a pediatric nurse practitioner. I knew I wanted to help people in some way. But once I went into nursing school and started to work with the elderly and others, and once I, of course, worked with the pediatric specialty, I definitely couldn't find myself continuing to see the children get sick, and some did not make it, and so I kind of steered towards the older population.
Yeah.
So definitely, I've always felt that if I wanted to be a nurse, just because of watching my mom care for others, that was something that was near and dear to me.
Wow.
That's so sweet.
And I know like 2020, we've all been affected by what's been going on. It was a huge year in terms of putting a spotlight on healthcare and this pandemic and changing the way that we live our lives. How do you feel about how that's changed the industry that you work within right now?
Yeah, great question. It's changed everyone's life, but and particularly for healthcare, we have many, many shortages. We found many nurses that have retired. As you know, you see many nurses that may have worked into their 60s, even 70s. But with the pandemic, coming as rampant as it did, it was really scary for those that were working and wanted to ensure that their quality of life was met. And it was just time for a lot of the nurses to retire, which we were already in a nurse shortage already.
Mhm.
And so that's been really hard on healthcare. And what we're finding right now is with the second spike for the phase two, is what we would call it. We're finding a lot of people from healthcare workers of all, from nurses, physicians, respiratory therapists, laboratory techs, everyone, they're burnt out. And they've worked really hard, and even regardless of the incentives that we continue to give them, it's stressful. It's stressful to bring that home to their families, and to be in the midst of what we continue to see every single day, even loved ones unable to come and visit their loved ones in the hospital. And so we find ourselves being that family member even the more. And so it's really stressful, especially when we see so many not make it.
How do
So it's
you
definitely changed.
how do you deal with that? So you have the burnout and seeing what's happening, and then like you just mentioned with being family limited to come be with their loved ones doing those stages that they're going through. So what do you do for yourself to relieve some of the stress?
hmm Yeah. So a couple of things. We do everything that we absolutely can do for the family members that are there. And so we have iPads, cell phones, whatever that looks like, to make sure that they're intentionally able to connect their family members. Even those that are on the outside, if their family members are unable to communicate with them because they are sick, at least we can show them their loved ones. And so that helps us a little, knowing that we can provide something to them. I think on the outside, spiritually, I think for me, it keeps me grounded to make sure that I understand why I'm there, and that it's really a mission for me. Nursing is absolutely, I feel, a calling, and it's absolutely a mission for me to be there to care for those when their loved ones can't care for them. And so I am their loved one when they are there in the hospital, regardless, even if it wasn't COVID. That is our mission. And so I think just reminding myself that I can only do what I can do, and making sure I try and separate what has happened at the hospital to home, and be there in the moment at home when I need to be, and at the hospital when I need to be. I think, and then spiritually, making sure that I'm sound, and that I'm processing everything that's happening, but not holding on to what has happened, kind of breathe that out once I walk through the door, I think has really been very helpful, for me in particular.
Awesome. So what type of precautions do you take, like that separation between work and home? When you come home after you worked within the hospital setting, what kind of precautions do you take when you come home?
Yeah. So one thing about my job, because it's more administrative, I'm not always in the patient's rooms. Now, the good thing is that I can go and I can round, and I can go into those rooms and to the hallways. And I do round very often. But if I find myself rounding in inpatient rooms, then I would absolutely, once I come into the door, I would separate myself, my clothes, and leave those clothes there in the garage, and go up and take a shower, and then come out to family. If it's just a normal business day and I'm in the office or just walking through the organization, then of course my shoes are always, I leave my shoes there in the garage, because they're always, I'm walking through the hallways, and then everything else is usually fine until it's time for us to lay down and everything else. So really the separation begins with the mind, as well. And so I say my travel, I do travel about an hour to work every day. And so I will say me decompressing myself in the car on the way home has been very helpful. Listening to podcasts, books, or whatever that is to encourage me, and then or catching up with other loved ones on my way home. That really helps me separate what has happened throughout the day.
Awesome. And I know this is your precautions as a nurse because you're in a healthcare facility, but what would you advise people to do who are maybe going to the grocery store or going from their job and they're interacting with people? What would you suggest as a nurse that people do, just to protect their family and their loved ones when they come home?
Yeah. I would say number one, try not to walk in fear, right? Because if you're fearful, then that hinders you from being successful at anything, and can even increase your risk to being susceptible to any infection. So I would say go out, be wise, research. We do know that wearing your mask, keeping your distance, and washing your hands are the three things that's needed, and that we promote to prevent you from contracting any disease, really, but in particular, COVID-19. And so I would encourage those that are out in the marketplace in any type of way to do those three things. And then in addition to that, be cautious, of course, and be aware of your surroundings. There are others that may not wear their masks, that may not wash their hands or keep their distance. And so it is important for you to protect yourself, just as if you're driving a vehicle. They always tell you you're driving for yourself and for others. And so you're out there, but you have to protect yourself. And in order for you to protect others, that's why you're wearing your protective gear. But others don't always protect you. And so be mindful and keep your distance from those that are not protecting you. And also be able to understand that it's important for you not to be in closed, small environments to increase your risk. for getting COVID-19, and even the new strand that they even have now, which they're saying is about 50% more
Just
contagions. And
mhm.
so it's just going to be really important for us not to let our guard down, don't walk in fear, but be very knowledgeable and use wisdom as we go out. Yeah.
So you recently received one of the vaccinations for the COVID. How was that, and which one did you get?
Okay. So I received the Pfizer, and the reason that I received the Pfizer because that was the very first one that was offered to us. So when it was delivered, that was the very first one that was approved to our healthcare organization, and we first vaccinated all of the healthcare workers that were at frontline there taking care of the patients, and then we did kind of a phase approach on throughout the organization and to administration and so forth. And now we've opened it up to everyone. So Pfizer was what was available for us. And so I took that and I've received my second dose. And that was a good experience. So I would say every time I take the flu vaccination, which I do take that every single year, I do believe in the science. I do believe that anything that I can do to decrease the risk of me getting even more sick from whatever is trying to protect me from, whether it's the flu or COVID-19, that I will do my part to take that. Why? Because I do believe in the science and the medicine behind that. And so when I get the flu vaccination every year, I get a fever, I get a little fatigue, headaches, and that lasts usually for 24 to 48 hours. So I know that is me. That's my response always to the flu vaccination. But the COVID-19 vaccination, I was expecting the same response. The side effects are minimum, but those are the side effects: fatigue, headache, fever, and sore arm, of course. And so the first vaccination, I actually only had a sore arm. I did put it in my non-dominant arm so that I wouldn't have to, move it around too much. But I did have a sore arm, I would say, for about 24 hours. Once I received, and I didn't have anything else, no other side effects from the first dose. And then the second dose, which was approximately 21 days afterwards, I did have a sore arm, and I believe it was even more sore than the first time. Now it's the same dose, same amount, but it was a little bit more sore than the first time, and I did get a headache, and I did have a low grade fever. And so that lasted for about 24 to 48 hours. But there was just kind of this headache, and I began to think about those that actually are diagnosed with COVID-19 and the side effects that I received. Those are some of the side effects that we know that others perceive when they actually have the virus. And so I just begin to think about those that have had to go through the virus. And if anything, I felt, I'm grateful that these are the only side effects that I've had to deal with, but I know that my body can produce those antibodies to really help fight. If I am presented with the virus at all from an outside source, but it really gave me more empathy for even those that are dealing with the virus, just understanding that theirs is magnified even more than what I went through. And so again, I expected it. It wasn't anything that was new that happened, and there were some people that didn't have any side effects, and there were some just had a sore arm, and some received almost all the side effects, from nausea to fatigue. But those were my side effects, and they subsided after the 48 hours.
Okay.
So I'm still a little nervous about taking the vaccine.
Yeah.
I actually have the opportunity because I work for a healthcare organization as well. So can you explain, were you required to do it, or was this your choice? And if it was your choice, why you felt comfortable taking the vaccine, and kind of how you see your future now that you have the vaccine, operating any differently because you feel a little safer, or how your feelings revolve around that, and what recommendations would you tell people who are still on the fence?
Yeah, great question. So I would say I was not required. No one is required to take the vaccine in our healthcare organization. I don't believe anyone has mandated that across the country. Why? Because of course it's so new. Many people are on the fence,
Mm-hmm.
like you mentioned, and so I took the vaccine. My why was to protect those that I love. And I haven't seen my mom in over a year because of COVID-19. And so I know that the only way that I can protect her and my in-laws and others that I love is to actually take the vaccination in order for me to be as protected as I can be. Now, with that being said, the vaccination does not give us the right to then decrease what we're doing to protect others.
Right.
Because the vaccination is so new, they're still studying to see if I can contract COVID-19 or spread COVID-19 to others. And so, one of the things that we continue to tell those within the organization and across that have received the vaccination, and CDC continues to communicate that as well. Please wear your mask, keep your distance, and wash your hands. That does not exclude you from the rest of the population who has not received their vaccination. And it also takes 2 weeks after you've received your second dose to actually get that immunity. And so even with the immunity, even with the 2 weeks afterwards, it's really important for us to continue to wear our masks to protect others and to protect ourselves because again, we're still studying. Now while there's been over 40,000 people in particular for Pfizer that has been tested and went through the trials and so forth. It's still science. So the more numbers we have, the more research that we can do, the better that we can position ourselves to be able to say, yes, we know that we're good and we no longer have to wear a mask, but we're not there yet. Just to be honest, we're not. And so it is only smart to make sure that you continue to protect yourself and wear your mask. I would say for those that are on the fence, continue to do the research. Don't listen to the news. Don't listen to anyone else that may have, their own opinion about this is the mark of the beast or this is a way to inject something in you. I absolutely do not believe that. I do, again, like I said, I believe in research. And I know that this has been researched. And so this is how we get other cures and other things throughout, whether it's cancer or other things that addresses diseases that we've been dealing with within the world. And so this is just the beginning. One thing I would say is because we've had so many cases, they've been able to speed up the research. They've been able to test faster than you normally would. So when they say a vaccine takes a very long time to test and how can they come out with something so quickly, well, we've had so many deaths and we've had so many people that's been exposed to it. That gives us the science, the ability to produce faster. And so again, I would say read the research, study, make sure that you feel comfortable with it. And I would not encourage anyone to take the vaccination or anything if they do not feel that there's a yes within themselves, to take it, not just to follow someone else that's taking it. But I do say that when I personally knew of some physicians and others that were a part of some of the study trials as well. So that helped me, in particular, and just to kind of know a little bit more about the research and what has been studied has helped me. But I had to read it. I had to read it and I couldn't listen to the radio. I couldn't listen to the news and I couldn't listen to the one or two people that possibly died. Everyone is going to have a reaction from Tylenol, from anything. And so it's going to be really important for you to study yourself.
Yeah, I find that to be one of the most frustrating things is that a simple thing like wearing a mask and it's become so political that and it's like it's just a simple request to not only save your life but to save the life of your loved ones, and we have the science that backs it up and everything, but it just bewilders me. So I encourage everyone to wear a mask not only for your own safety, but as Jonette was able to express, it's also for your loved ones to make sure you protect them. So we've been in the pandemic now for over a year. I think this past week made the 1 year anniversary of the first case that came to the US. So I'm sure a lot of viewers already know the symptoms and what to expect. But do you mind recapping, like, what are some of the symptoms to COVID? If you experience any of those symptoms, what steps should you take?
Yeah. So one of the things that makes it really hard to distinguish if you have COVID or seasonal allergies or, just a cold, is because the symptoms look so much alike, right? And so they're going to be your general symptoms that you would have for a general cold as well. So sore throat, headache, fever would be something that's additional from a cold, of course, but runny nose. If you also have, now they've added, nausea, and also loss of taste, loss of smell. Those are things that have also been added. Some people do not have any symptoms, unfortunately, at all. But I do know, for the most part, those are the major symptoms, just those upper respiratory type of symptoms with the headache and the runny nose and a cough, definitely is one as well. And so I just always advise everyone, if it's something that just doesn't smell right, don't feel right, and if it doesn't pass the sniff test, if you can't sniff, if you can't smell at all, or you can't taste, probably go ahead and get tested. And of course, if you are around anyone that is positive, it will not hurt to wait a few days, if you're not having any symptoms, and then go and get tested. Because you just want to make sure that you're not continuing to add to the number of spreading, without knowing. And so definitely those are the main symptoms that you would have if you do have COVID. But again, a reminder, there are many cases that people do not have any symptoms at all.
Awesome. So I think that was a lot of information, not just about yourself, but also to help maybe someone else who doesn't feel comfortable, like myself, about the vaccine, or just learning some different precautions that we have to take with this virus. I think towards the tail end of 2020, with the holidays and the start of 2021, I think there's a little bit of fatigue. To be more cautious and careful. So we're trying to be a little bit more relaxed. We're seeing people, but we gotta be vigilant, because this virus is not going anywhere. And until like everyone is vaccinated, or until we have some other treatment that can really help limit the spread, then we have to pay attention and make sure that we're protecting ourselves and each other. So I'm so thankful for you, Jonette, to come by and share your story of how you felt with the first dose and the second dose. And I appreciate you. I don't know if Ashanti is ready.
Yes, thank you, sister, for coming on and talking to our viewers. Again, this is a new show for us, and we want to expand, and you're our first guest, so we appreciate that. And on our show, what we want to do is talk about all things reality, right? So our lives, recapping reality TV, and we also want to celebrate Black excellence. And part of that, we want to make sure, as part of those who come into our queendom, we recognize them. So we want to thank you and all the other healthcare workers that are out there, and essential workers that are out there doing their part to protect us and everything. But at this point, we want to name you our Queen of the Week and honor you, and just again say thank you for all that you're doing to save lives, not only at your organization and in your area, but your work does spread out across the country and across the world. So thank you. And Queen of the Week, Miss Jonette Davis.
Yeah. This is your virtual
so
tiara.
Very first virtual tiara. Thank you.
So thank you again for joining us. We want to remind our viewers that tonight, Married at First Sight comes on. So be sure to watch and look for our recap on Saturday. And continue to subscribe and to watch all our shows and share the videos, spread the word, let others know. And we hope to see you again next week.
Yes, and remember to protect your throne.